everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. My name's Ben Jackson, and I'm back to host this episode. Joining me, as per usual, are Scott and Joris. Guys, how are you doing this evening?
I'm very well indeed. Hello everybody, and what do you know, our Ben has finally made it back from Ghent. Did you get in the door about 5 minutes ago?
It feels like it, but that's just because of the bloody traffic on the way back from Brighton to Worthing. Trying to eat and podcast at the same time is never a good idea, but tonight I'm going to multitask my way through this one.
Traffic issues are, yeah. Everyone knows them, but Ben specifically has had his share the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. No, but fantastic trip to the old Belgium, going to see Ghent against Westerlo, the 2-2 draw with Omri Gemderman scoring the last minute. Even my wife was like, that was actually quite fun. She also called the Ghent Stadium the best football stadium she's been to. So that's just kind of dumping on the Medeitsky and then Merker Spiel Arena, as they call it in Düsseldorf, because those are the only other two. And Brighton as well. So Ghent ranked very highly on her list of football stadiums that she's been to out of the couple. So, well, congratulations to Ghent on that one. But that's old news. Let's dive into this weekend's actions. No Friday game because we had all the midweek matches as well. We'll touch them a little bit during this bit, but we're kind of more going to focus on what's happened more recently because that's kind of more relevant to what we're going to kind of discuss. Just kicking off on Saturday, we had Molenbeek against Standard Liège. Battle to avoid the kind of relegation places at the moment. That one finished 2 apiece. Kortrijk, they beat a Charleroi that had a little bit of a resurgence, 1-0. Westerlo, they lost 3-0 at home to OH Leuven. Genk, they also lost at home. They lost 1-0 to Union. Antwerp left it incredibly late to beat Club Brugge 2-1 on Sunday. Eupen lost 1-0 at home to Mechelen. Anderlecht beat Ghent 1-0 in a very controversial game in Brussels. And then Cercle Brugge handed Sint-Truiden a 4-1 defeat to round off the weekend. But let's start in Brussels at the Edmond Machten Stadion for Molenbeek against Standard Liège. And maybe if kind of Lecco hadn't been brought in, this could have been a Hufkins Kakapva kind of El Sakiko, as they like to call it, because these two teams on a horrendous run of form. Didn't go very well for Molenbeek early on. Kanga making it 1-0 to Standard Liège. Awful defending. He just seems to, there's just, if you watch the kind of highlights of this one, it's just him against 5 defenders, and he somehow is the guy that runs through everyone and scores the goal. They did get back into it, Molenbeek, though. Cross from Sambu, which I have to say fair play. I don't know how he got to the ball before it went out of play, but he did cross the back post. Gay kind of misses it with his head, but Bion smashes it in, and just you felt like that was one of those moments where it's like, oh, they've missed him when he put that one in the back of the net. Looked like Molenbeek had nicked it 83rd minute. Eli Kamara with a nice little finish to make it 2-1, but literally 2 minutes later, Kelvin Yeboah comes off the bench for his first game for Standard Liège, and he makes it 2-2. Point of peace for both sides. Keep Standard out of the relegation spots. Keep Molenbeek in those relegation playoff spots. But I guess, guys, not really a good point for either side.
Yeah, well, this was a game really about a tale of two sides who just can't win a game. You know, as Ben was kind of alluding to there. I think a draw was probably on the balance of play a fair result. Both sides will not be unjust to, consider themselves a little bit unlucky. But yeah, I mean, looking at Molenbeek, winless in 7 now. They conceded 18 in that time, so they really are conceding far too many goals. We know they don't score that many, so they're not leaving themselves much wiggle room at the moment. Standard, on the other hand, winless in 10, and I know that our Joris has got a slightly staggering stat in relation to their run coming up that we're going to give you all at the moment, because I was a bit floored with this one actually. Kind of took me out of the blue, and I know their form hasn't been good. Lecco's still winless in 4, and still cutting a slightly frustrated figure. I said when he came in, I felt he was maybe the right man at the wrong time. And when you've got a mix of the form that they're in at the moment with players who are being paid late, it's not a great motivating factor, even if you've got a coach who maybe fits the profile of the club a little bit better. Big games for both these sides kind of coming up, and Standard, as Lecco was saying, saying this week really need to sort of, pick some points up from somewhere really soon. He said actually after this game, he said, look, if you're not up for the fight, then, just stay at home, because, he realises, I think now that he's in there and he's starting to get a sense of these players that, they're kind of up against it really. But the one saving grace for them is surely they'll be sitting there thinking our luck's got to turn at some point. We're due 2 or 3 wins at a really key point of the season, and we're not that far away from the playoffs now, and they do not want to be in that drop zone when that time comes.
Yeah, but it's not looking great, and I think they actually will take this point in the end, because they really escaped here with that late goal. They're still only 1 point ahead of the relegation zone. Scott already mentioned, still winless under Leko. That's 2 points out of a possible 12 now. And the stat he was talking about, he was setting me up for, was it's their longest non-winning streak since 1954, which is as you can imagine, 70 years. So that's that's not great. That's really staggering indeed. So like I said, I think they will be happy more or less with this point in the end, since it I can't call it differently than a fluke goal that Yeboah scored on his first touch in Belgian football here. So it was a shot from the Wale that would have gone wide anyway, and he somehow gets his knee against it. It's also I guess it's a good striker reflex, I guess, though, putting his leg out somehow. But he had no idea where it was going anyway. I don't think there was much intentions in there. And that hampered Molenbeek's hopes, of course, of winning that game, which they maybe deserved actually overall. And they will also be moderately happy that they finally got a point, because it's their first point after 5 losses in a row. But yeah, if you come so close to a win and you're still in the relegation zone, and you would not have been anymore, or at least had be in a better position for it to get out of it. Yeah, you can't really be completely happy. But Ben mentioned it already. Biron being back could be and not being sold as well. Could be okay. Still have to see how that goes, because some markets are still open, but most likely it looks like at least he's not moving inside Belgium. There were some rumors that Gent were interested in him, but that didn't materialize. But he got 2 goals in 2 games now, and I guess you could say go watch that one back, because it's really a good strike, one of the best strikes of this weekend. That equalized at the time. But yeah, all in all, nobody really happy with this. Nobody really unhappy, I guess. Well, I guess both teams unhappy is more the way to go here. But it is what it is, and both teams definitely still have a lot of things to worry about.
Yeah, they definitely do, and I don't want to kind of worry Standard fans more, and I kind of hope this proves to be wrong. But Kelvin Yeboah, in his last 3 clubs that he's played for, he has scored 1 goal for each of those teams. He's already scored 1 goal for Standard. Is this the only goal? Will this be the only goal? I hope for their sake they get the Sturm Graz Kelvin Yeboah that scored I think he scored like 20 and 45. But yeah, Genoa 1 and 31, Augsburg 1 and 13, Montpellier, who he was just playing for before he joined Standard, 1 and 15. So yeah, that could be it. This could be the only goal he scores. It could be a crucial point at the end of the season. No one's going to really care, but he was an interesting pickup, and I think it's interesting, Scott, you said about Leko saying he's up for the fight and stuff like that, and it's probably quite easy then to look at the squad and be like, there's so many lone players, maybe it's them that aren't up for the fight. But in most of the cases, they're actually kind of contributing quite a bit, these guys on loan. So it's kind of it's the collective at the moment. Molenbeek, I think both these teams, to be fair, losers this weekend because of everything that happened. The couple of teams we can throw into that category, one of those has to be Charleroi. They are 100% a weekend loser for me. They go to Kortrijk, and I saw like a review of this game where they're like, oh, well, to be fair, Kortrijk picking up quite a few points, so you can't really blame them for losing this game, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yes, Kortrijk have improved, but they have to win this game. Like, this is one of those games that you have to win if you want to stay up. It doesn't matter that Kortrijk are on a like kind of good run at the moment. They're bottom of the league. You've got to put in a performance. And they just didn't. It's it's Kortrijk, who come out with the win. Isaac Davies, now top scorer for the club. He gets the all-important goal in the 45th minute with an assist from Cadley. It's just, more and more frustration for Charleroi. It's spoken about them in the past, kind of talk about them like sleepwalking into these relegation zones. They won during the week against Eupen, so you thought like, maybe this is going to be kind of the turnaround moment where they do come back. But even in that game, Eupen had like a ridiculous amount of chances. They had this ridiculous good chance at the end of the game. I can't remember who it was who just absolutely blazed it into the whatever's, I don't know what behind the stadium, but whatever's behind the stadium, I'm presuming some sort of industrial estate, judging by what people say about Charleroi as a place to go. So I'm presuming that's where the ball ends up, and it's probably just stayed there.
It could have been a parking spot.
Which is probably next to an industrial estate. I'm sure it's ended up somewhere that no one's going to get it. But yeah, Kortrijk win 1-0. It's just, for them, a fantastic run of form that they're on. Obviously, during the week, they had that kind of ridiculous 3-3 draw with Club Brugge, but that's what clean sheets in their 3 games. So 4 games they played under Felix Anderson, 3 clean sheets, a 3-3 draw with Club Brugge that they snatched late on. You just feel like, what? Should have got this guy in earlier. This guy, he's really making things happen. And so another big win for them. They are catching up to those teams in kind of second, third, bottom, which is probably what they're looking at, that third bottom spot. If they can make their way into that kind of player spot with this momentum, I think, guys, they've got a massive chance of staying up the way they're playing.
Well, we've kind of been hinting heavily for a few weeks now since Alex Anderson came in that we were immediately kind of collectively kind of quite impressed by him, I think, on a number of levels. Certainly looking at things from the outside, there were some really positive signs. Undefeated, as Ben was saying, and I think he's probably due a kind of proper rave-in now. I'm kind of convinced that's a really good appointment now, even this early. Some really positive things going on there. 8 out of 12 points, as Ben was saying, in those first 4 games. But to put that in its wider context, if you look at the rest of the season up to that point, Kortrijk had picked up 10 out of a possible 60 points up to this point. So, he's almost gathered as much points as the whole of the season already, which is absolutely wild if you think about it. He's been very decisive and very positive, I think, in his choices and going in there early. I think crucially, as I was saying to Joris last week, he's actually getting more out of the players that are there, and he's moved out some of the players he doesn't fancy. So he hasn't come in here and went, I'm going to take a bit of time and assess this squad and move out who I want. I think he was very clear from the moment he went in there, who he didn't fancy. He's obviously been watching games and looked at some data, spoke to some staff, and already made some really concrete decisions. He's moved out a few. More faces have come in than I expected as well, which is good. He's been proactive there. We're yet to see Norwegian midfielder Ivar Fossum, who probably will feature this weekend. He's in, he's training, he's ready. Kings Kangwa, the Zambian midfielder, I don't think his paperwork's ready. So unless somebody gets a threatening phone call in the next couple of days and told to get the red pen out, then we might not see him this weekend. But yeah, lots of reasons to be optimistic for Kortrijk. And actually, as Ben was saying, when you look at the points now and the turnaround there in the last 3 weeks and the way results have gone for other sides, I never thought I would say that they've actually got a real chance now. I thought they were buried weeks ago, absolutely weeks ago, and it underlines what Ben was saying about not only getting them in earlier, but see if you get the right man, if you get the right guy in, it just shows you what could happen at any club. And I'm not saying they're going to stay up yet by any means. I'm not predicting that, but I'm looking at it now going, if I was them, I would fancy their chances. They've got some interesting games coming up as well. They've got St. Truden away, Union at home, Mechelen away, and Molenbeek at home. So winnable games in the next 3 or 4 there. possibly with the exception of the Union game. That's the toughest one by quite some distance. They will fancy some more points there, I think, and things are really looking up for them. And if the objective is to make the relegation playoff spot and stay up that way, then they're certainly well on course for that. But, they've got every chance of squeaking beyond that as well, because Charleroi, who obviously, as Ben was saying, they beat and kind of deserve to beat purely through their attacking intent this weekend. Lots of worrying signs there. We've been saying for ages, Mazu's just not getting enough out of that squad. Odi Daba's back, top scorer with only 4 goals. That's a small positive, but there's other negatives in there again. Adam Zorgan and Mbenza are out. Not sure how long for, but they're going to miss them possibly for 1 or 2 weeks. Both important players, even if they're not at their best at the moment. And they're just really struggling to score goals. You just don't see where the points are coming from at the moment.
Yeah, indeed. Charleroi, well, not much to say about them anymore. Like we've said so many and so little as well. I guess we didn't really zoom in too much on them yet either. But yeah, like Ben is saying, really sleepwalking into the relegation zone like this, and yeah, get out of this slump. I personally also don't really see it. Yeah, fans are unhappy, obviously. Also, they really need to pick up some points away from home. They still have no away wins, only 3 points out of the will it be 11 or 12 away games normally now? So that's just with these numbers, you really need to be really, really good at home. They're not too bad at home, to be honest, in points at least in what I gather. But yeah, nonetheless, they really need to get something together away from home, specifically. And they had crawled out of the relegation zone then in the midweek game against Eupen, but yeah, immediately they're back into it. So yeah, I don't really see it going well either. Yeah, and on Kortrijk, especially good that they still have a fighting chance. Given the results, like Charleroi won indeed last week somehow. A game in between. Eupen themselves have won some games in between, although they're now also a little bit more in a slump, but we'll touch on that later. Again, Leuven is in a great form as well. The teams around them actually or right above them in their case, are actually picking up points as well. But nonetheless, they're getting closer and closer, and they really do have that fighting chance. So yeah, impressive work. First win against Charleroi in 10 games in this head-to-head fixtures for Kortrijk as well. So it's another good statistic for them as well, specifically if they want, especially if they might encounter them once again later on in the season in these playoffs, if both these sides would be in there, of course, which is not a given, but it's not completely unrealistic that would be the case.
Yeah, it's looking more and more likely by the week, isn't it? And you mentioned kind of those teams above them are picking up points, but that's then just pulling Charleroi and Molenbeek closer and closer and closer to them at the same time. And yeah, I think Scott, you made such a kind of good point about they can't score, and then the transfers they made: Jeremy Petlis, right back; Achraf Dari, centre back; Etienne Kamara, central midfielder. He's never, from what I can see, scored a professional goal. You're like, yeah, Ode Deval's back and he's been okay. Like, let's not get too carried away. Like, he's been fine, but it's kind of in the past. I think we look at them in the past. You kind of obviously they've always had this kind of very imposing physical striker like Shamar Nicholson, Bayo. I can't remember some of the people they've had before that, but even like Victor, also back to like Osserman and people like that. They've had these like physically imposing strikers, but they've also had wingers that would chip in with goals like Mamadou Fall and players like that. And no one is doing that. Like you'd look at someone like a Dan Heymans or a Morioka. Morioka more to kind of create, but then Heymans maybe to chip in with a couple of goals like he can do, and he has chipped in with a couple of assists. But it's kind of he
has been unlucky as well, Heymans. probably could have gotten a goal. Well, he could have been their top scorer at this moment, but that he's hit the bar a lot of times.
He always hits the bar on the post, doesn't he?
Yes.
Like, if you go on the football map and you check kind of like stats for the game, if you press on Hemmings, it's has hit the post the most times in this game or something like that. Like, I think Mazzi's realised that he's playing him more. Like, he's sticking him back in the side. But yeah, and then you mentioned Kings Kangwa. It's just nice to have a Zambian back in the Pro League. It's been very, very good for Zambian footballers over the years, and it's nice to have another one back in there. So kudos to him. Hopefully he can kind of have a nice impact, because on his day, yeah, he's a pretty decent player, to say the least. Another winner from this weekend was definitely 08 Leuven, probably winners of the week. To be fair, with the two results they got that kind of win against Genk during the midweek, and then they follow that up and just. They kind of Westerlo'd Westerlo. Westerlo, obviously, against Cercle Bruges the other day, just absolutely battered into kind of a commanding lead and held on. And 11 just did the same to them. Banzuzi from a corner in the second minute. Florian Miguel, didn't know he had that in his locker. Lovely finish at the back post. Bjorn-esque, I guess you could say. And then I think it was in the second half, Ter Romans with assist of the season with one of the worst back passes you'll probably have seen this year. Matthew Mertens, fantastic to see him kind of back amongst the goals. He's just been really, really struggling. I think they've really, really missed him at like fully fit. He's kind of been in and around the squad coming off the bench, but he's not really been fully fit. And he's saying he's starting to feel better again. And that could be a massive, massive like return to form for them to get him. So they're putting on a little bit of a run. They jump into onto 12th place with 24 points. They move with Charleroi out of the relegation zone. Wesley kind of halts their little run a little bit, kind of like a reality check. They had a lot of the ball, but just couldn't find the back of the net in this one. But not too concerning, I guess you could say. It might be just one of those games for them. They've looked really decent in recent weeks, and they've been quite fun to watch. Have to say, just kind of touching on them, when I went to that Ghent Westerlo game, I was like really, really impressed with some of the intricate play they were doing. Vermant as well. Vermant just seems that he'd only recently just signed. He just slotted into that system so well. And you could tell like Rick DeMille knows how to use Romeo Vermant. He knew the kind of like the linkages and the stuff to do with him and like Griffin Yao and a couple of the other guys. So really, really enjoyable watching them play. So yeah, I'm not too worried about them after this defeat. I think they look like they've turned the corner, and they look like they should, with the momentum and the players and the way they're playing, they should pick up enough points to stay up. But for Leuven, massive, massive win, kind of back-to-back wins. I don't know if one of you has the stat, but I can't imagine that's happened for a very long time.
I'm sure Joris will have some stats for us in a second, but, you know, Leuven are alive, everybody. I think Oscar Garcia actually was making the point last week, after the win last week. He was saying that he felt that they deserved more from a lot of their recent games since he's come in, and that they've been a bit unlucky, which maybe there is something in. So I think he feels that they're kind of starting to turn a corner now, maybe get their just rewards. This, I think, is a pretty impressive result because, you know, as Ben was saying, Westerlo have been improving, you know, a fair bit since the Mill came in. That's only their second defeat in 8 now. And yeah, they're improving fairly steadily. So this is a really solid result for them. Leuven scoring 5 goals over the last 2 games as well. So they've found their kind of scoring boots again, and a kind of blend that seems to be working for them. And I didn't really see this result coming. I think this is one of the most impressive results of the weekend. And things, you know, it's added to the intrigue down at the bottom. There was a lot of sides there that, you know, before the winter break were just struggling abominably. Do you know what I mean? You couldn't see where, you know, anything positive was coming from, and the window was very quiet for Leuven. You know, I didn't think that, you know, they'd done enough necessarily to change anything significant at all. But much like Cartwright, they'll be looking at things much more positively now, and kind of rightly so. They've got, interestingly, when I was having a look at this today, Leuven have got a pretty much what I would call a season-defining month ahead of them, really. They've got Standard away, Charleroi at home, and Molenbeek away. A good points haul there changes the season for them, you know, and could very well see them out of the drop zone completely. You know, if they do well there and other results go in their favour. So that's an upturn in form for them, a really, really important point.
I'll tell you more. If you only take the last 5 games, Leuven would be first in the rankings. So they got 11 out of the possible 15 points. to come back specifically to 2 wins in a row. That's something from last season, though. But the back end of last season that happened. I don't know exactly if it was the last game day or maybe slightly before that. But in the last game days of last season, that happened in match weeks. Yeah, Westerlo. Well, midweek win against Cercle, but this time they were leaking in defense. And Rommels had a topsy-turvy week, even inside. Like, he was really good against Cercle with two assists, but on the other hand, he also got sent off in the second half already. So that's where his fortunes turned already. And in this game against Leuven, it was not his day. For sure. But to touch on the possession a bit more as well, Westerlo had 74% of possession, massive amount, 7 shots on target as well, 14 corners, but 0 outputs. So that's another thing that lacked in combination with that giving away goals in the end. Leuven indeed, like I mentioned, the best informed team at the moment, and quietly getting a place in the peloton, still at the back end of the peloton now, but still, they also gave themselves a good fighting chance here. Lazen, I guess, again deserves a mention. It's becoming a weekly thing. It's not that he's brilliant throughout the whole game. He still has some icky moments sometimes, but that he had a lot of good saves again. And another thing that's, well, Maarten's Ben already touched on him, but he also scored with his first touch. Of course, this time not in Belgium, but in the first touch in this game after coming on as a sub. So it looks like it was a little bit of a team this week that happened. But good for him to see him back on the scoring sheet as well. Definitely.
That's why we call him the stat man, everybody, Joris, because if I don't have the stat to hand, I know he does.
All that research that we do to get into this podcast. No, it's to keep air for them, and it still didn't stop them having a bizarre moment at the end of the transfer window where suddenly that rumour broke that they were trying to swap the striker that they signed in the summer, like the one guy that was going to be the guy to score goals, and they're already trying to ditch him in January for Benjamin Tete, who's barely scored any goals in the last couple of years. I just saw that and I was like, what? If this couldn't be any more Leuven. And then he was just like, if there's someone from the scouting department listening, I'd love to kind of hear if you actually get listened to by the hierarchy in this place, because I can't imagine that the targets that they're going for are actually some of these guys, and they're not actually trying to get players that we, from the outside looking, think they clearly need a player in this position. And by January, most of the time they've sold the guy that they bought in the summer. Speaking of strikers that are pretty decent and they're pretty good, Mohamed Amoura for Union Saint-Gilloise, he was the deciding factor in the game against Genk. Lovely header from a set-piece. Cameron Pertes cross, he heads it in. Gustav Nielsen's still there. There was kind of rumours that he would leave and go to Ghent, although I think someone wrote in Het Newsblad, like, why would he leave a title-chasing side on the brink of, like, they could win a title for the first time in ages, and he's a key component of that at the moment. Why would he leave that and go play for Ghent? This didn't make any sense. And clearly it didn't, because he's still there. But he was the guy Hein wanted, and apparently, which you can kind of see, can't you? You look at him and you're like, yeah, that looks like a Hein guy. Like, I'm sure Hein would love a bit of Nielsen up front, but alas, he is still at Union. He's not at Ghent. A good win for Union. More frustration for Genk. Really frustrating week for them. Joris, you don't have to talk about the Leuven game, but you can just focus on this one if you want. But it feels like there's no momentum or anything going on in the club or with the squad at the moment.
Yep, that's definitely true. No wins in 2024 yet. Only 2 points out of possible 12. There looked to be a slight momentum building at the end of last year, around the Christmas period, even with that Anderlecht game where they, let's say, they didn't get the points, at least the controversial game there, but they still played. The level was quite good. And afterwards they beat Antwerp convincingly as well. So it looked like finally that they were on track and going, but somehow it all evaporated so quickly. Yeah, that momentum has been broken really, really, really quickly. Yeah, disappointing transfer window as well. I suppose some injuries now, as it's not an excuse, but like some vital points, because like in this momentum building, Sor and Fadera look to be like Sor in as a striker, Fadera then on the left wing, and Paintsel on the right wing. All three have, of course, been absent for several reasons in the last couple of weeks as well. But not necessarily a big fan of any of them individually, but all combined, they're just so pacey, and no defense can rest, and that seemed to have been the key maybe for Franke to at least build a little bit of momentum, and then maybe try to see what he can still tweak on this. But due to certain circumstances, things have not panned out like that, and also not with different players in their positions. Sor now also seems to be out. Fadera is definitely out until the playoffs, even if I'm not mistaken. And that left wing position, despite the amount of players that can play on the wings for Genk, seems to be a bit of an issue. Bonsuba is not convincing there, at least, but it's a bit. I guess you could say like you should be able to play at both wings, but equally, or not necessarily equally, but at least to a certain amount. But on the right wing, he can provide sometimes some things, but on the left wing, it just doesn't work out so far. He doesn't have that in his game at the moment. Of course, he's still very young, so he might develop that. Hopefully, he will, but can't really blame him for that. But yeah, things not going well. Despite everything, this was their first home loss in 10 home games now as well. But the unfortunate thing is, of course, most of these other games were also draws. So it's not that they got a huge points haul at home, but that streak has been broken nonetheless as well. And before that, there was a really bad streak at home, as you might remember, across all competitions. And on Unior or on the game, I guess set pieces were actually terrible from both sides throughout the whole game, except that one, of course, that ultimately decided it. And it's a bit ironic, I find it, that's in the end what decides it, because like Unior already had a few chances from set pieces from dangerous areas, much like this one, so a bit not too far outside of the box, and from the wing, so actually ideally to curl the ball towards the goal mouth and towards the players in the direction there. It led nowhere, but also Genk's corners, like they had plenty of corners throughout this game. I don't know how many exactly, I didn't look that up specifically either now, but they just, most of them were just headed away before the first post already, so it was really just not good. Union, I guess this game was not their greatest game either. It was a bit of a disappointing game in general, I think you can say, from both sides, but Union were in control for a large part of the game. So I guess they also, once they scored, it was also not likely that they would concede, even though Genk did create a few chances, really late on. But that was more, a bit of hope as well. It also feels a bit like Franken is indeed also still, again, maybe now searching for the right solution and not finding it at the moment. But not to take away. I'm not talking. I'm going back to Genk here. I will go to Union more. Because I guess they deserve it nonetheless. They won this one. 18 games unbeaten now. That's a very remarkable streak. That doesn't happen so often. And again, results going their way as well, like running away further and further. It could have been even more, but we'll talk about that later on in this episode probably. Professionally won this one, I guess, and it's a bit disappointing to see that the bit of lackluster in game from Genk as well.
Yeah, Joris is right. I think this game was, on the whole, pretty disappointing. I think most of us were expecting a rather good game here. Two sides who play really good football, and recent fixtures between these sides over the last couple of years have generally been really good, high quality games as well. This, unfortunately, wasn't one of them. Union managing to get the points when they themselves were pretty below par by their standards. But we know the mark of any good side in any league is, getting over the line when you're not at your best. And this is an element of Union's game which they've probably added. I mean, they've been so remarkably consistent. We talk about this a lot, and this is just another example of that. I mean, nowhere near the levels we know they can be at, and they still get the points. They're 10 points kind of clear now, and if they can maintain that, we're a wee while, not that far away, 8 weeks away, 8 match days away from the playoffs starting. If they can maintain that lead going into the playoffs, it's going to be exceptionally hard to overturn that lead, I think. For anybody, particularly when you bear in mind that at the moment, probably the main challenger, Anderlecht, are still arguably outperforming slightly, as we've been alluding to recently as well, and kind of touched upon. So to me, it's just, they are the streets ahead of everybody, really. And Mohamed Amoura is just absolutely relentless, much like that side is. 16 and 18 with 2 assists now. He had a massively disappointing AFCON, which probably is to Union's benefit ultimately. But yeah, they just, you wouldn't bet against them against anybody now. And they've been the team to catch for a long time, but I just don't see at the moment anyone catching them. Having said that, the one caveat in this that no one's mentioned yet is they've not really had a kind of slippery period of form yet all season, and all sides have it at some point. So the question is going to be when that comes. What they don't want is what we've seen in recent years, obviously, is that coming during the playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. What they'll hope is that this performance is one of those of the slips and they still just managed to win. But we've also got to remember that they are still competing on 3 fronts, and that's not easy, and it's not going to be easy. Like, they've got the cup game against Club Brugge coming up this week, and that's a 2-legged affair. Then they've got Eintracht Frankfurt, that's a 2-legged affair. And if there's one thing we know about Union is they're not going to put out a cup side in any of those, because we know that the mindset they seem to have is that, well, we're in them, we're going to try and win them. That's just kind of how they go about their business. So we know that the best players are going to play in each of those games. It's just going to be like, can they keep it up? Can they keep the momentum? And I think, yeah, it'd be really, really interesting to see. And it'd be kind of cool when it, like, Blessing goes from that East End side that was so fun and exciting to watch that missed out on the playoffs in the end, or missed out on playoff one, wasn't it, back then, and how gutting that was. And then that's kind of the end of East End as we kind of knew it under him. And now this is kind of his chance. It's like, well, he's not going to miss out this time, and he's getting to do all this European stuff. It's like a full circle moment for him, which is lovely to see. But yeah, they definitely are kind of streets ahead of everyone at the moment, and just winning games like this. And Amoura, yeah, like, I think the stat the other day was he scored more goals than games started in the Pro League this season, which is a little bit ridiculous. Let's move on to the Sunday games. One man who obviously loves a goal from the bench was George Elneny, but he's starting in this game with Antwerp hosting Club Brugge. All the action in the second half. Club Brugge take the lead through Maxime de Kuiper. Initial shot is saved by Jean Boutet. He spills it out to de Kuiper, who then tucks it in. Unfortunately, de Kuiper went off with a pretty bad-looking injury in this one. We wish him a speedy recovery, because it's been quite nice to see him just slot straight back into this kind of Club Brugge team after how good he was at Westerlo, and kind of make that kind of first starting spot his own. So yeah, we do wish him all the best. There's another youngster though that got Antwerp back level, Corbijn. Kobe Corbijn coming off the bench and absolutely leathering the ball into the back of the net. Ridiculously good goal from him. That was in the 86th, 87th minute. 90 plus, we're deep into added time when Antwerp get a free kick. Jakob Ondrejka steps up, and I'm not going to say he smashes it in. He places it into the corner, and Mignolet doesn't save it. And the look on Mignolet's face was, I should have saved this. I know I should have saved this. Finishes 2-1, but before then Hans van Aken gets sent off. And I saw a lot, because obviously after this game, it's like Club Brugge, they drew 3-3 with Kortrijk. at home, and then they lost this one to Antwerp. And all the kind of talk in the press before those two games has been about how good they've looked and this and that, and how great Dyler's been. And now suddenly it's like, yeah, old kind of chinks in the armor. Dyler's not as good. Like, he doesn't really know what he's doing most of the time. Blah blah blah. It's like you can't have it one of the other way. Like, you either think they're great or you don't. Like, you can't just suddenly start changing your tune so quickly on a team that has been on a ridiculously good run of form, and they're gonna slip up at times. So I find that just a bit like, oh, come on, like, we're just hashing out the same old when this guy's just taken them on a ridiculously good run and they've got some momentum going into this. They've just lost to the defending champions, and it was just at the end of the game, it just happens as it happens and stuff like that. But yeah, big win for Antwerp though, this one. It kind of puts them level on points with Club Brugge, solidifies their position a little bit more in that playoff one place, because we have to remember, guys, they were kind of looking like they might not actually make it. They kind of were slipping up a little bit, and they're putting a little bit of momentum behind them, even without Arthur and Mimiran. So that's 2 wins in a row for them, so maybe it's the start of something, who knows.
Football's mad, isn't it, guys? I mean, I still don't really understand how Club managed to throw this game away. They were generally the better side for, well, more than 3/4 of the game, played pretty well in the whole, managed to pin Antwerp in a lot, pressed them hard. They were pretty good, forcing a lot of mistakes. I thought they played well, managed to throw the game away. Throw the question out about, Mignolet's role in both goals is pretty questionable, I think. I think we know that now. A lot of the club fans really disappointed with Ronny Dyler's substitutions in this game. I don't think they're maybe as bad as some of the club fans think. I think that's maybe got more to do with kind of how the game obviously ended in the way that it did, rather than the substitutions themselves. But he does have this thing, Ronnie, of when club have the lead, his instinct as a coach is to protect that by making what I think a lot of fans would consider slightly negative substitutions and trying to shore things up when there were positive options on the bench. I think in this case, I've got a slight sympathy with him, just because your side's playing at the Bossel. Antwerp are very, very strong at home, unbeaten at home. Even though they weren't playing as well as they would normally do at home, I think there's just a sense of being up against that crowd, I think, even if you're in a winning position. So in a way, psychologically, I kind of get where he was coming from, although it didn't work out for him. That's club's first defeat in the league in 12. As Ben was saying, they've been in a brilliant run of form, and I don't think this game really should be used as a stick to beat Ronnie and his coaching staff that much. Having said that, when you look at the bigger picture, they really haven't had a good week. They've dropped 5 points this week. They dropped points against Kortrijk that, they shouldn't have, could have lost that game in the end, but didn't. And then this game's gone against them right at the death. So it hasn't been a good week for them. And, Union will have been watching that probably and enjoyed that quite a lot, because club were looking like the ones that they should have been more wary of than Anderlecht at the moment. So that's, if you're an Union fan and of that persuasion in Brussels, that'll have been kind of quite a sweet one to watch for you, bearing in mind as well that club have picked up some, reasonably nasty injuries to key players from that game. Suspensions are kind of coming up as well. Maxim de Kuiper, who's Ben was saying, quite a nasty case of whiplash. He was in hospital with that. He's actually made the squad, the full match squad for the cup final. We don't know whether he will appear. I would be surprised if he did, to be honest, but he's in the squad, and we'll see how those injuries affect them over the next couple of weeks, because they could be coming at kind of quite a nice time for some of their title challengers.
I don't agree with Scott on this one. I think Dyler completely ruined this game with his substitutions. Way too early. Like, you can do that. I can follow the reasoning a little bit if it's like in the final minutes of the game, but half an hour before the game, throwing in Boyata, who hasn't featured outside of a few cup games in the last couple of months, probably whole season even.
That was definitely the weirdest one. I'm glad Joris has brought Boyata up, everybody, because when Boyata came on, I said to the guys, guess who's coming on? Remember him?
it was not that long ago that he featured actually, but he hasn't featured for that long even, and even that is only half an hour. But well, not that is necessarily he didn't necessarily did anything wrong on the goals, I guess, but it was more like the mentality. Yeah, actually, a bit of a losing mentality, I guess, in this specific game, of course, and it was an accident waiting to happen just by the way they were controlling the game until then. And after that, actually, the momentum changed as well. So it's not that it changed before that. Yeah, and that's why I feel like, yeah, I think there are some things. My friend, Clivier fan, was saying it immediately already. Like, yeah, okay, this is they're never going to win this one now. It's way too early to go defensively at the moment. Yeah, especially, yeah, and when you're in control that much in a game, if you would not be in control already, I would also understand it a bit more. But now you basically gave away control by your own, partially at least, through your own changes. Yeah.
There was. It's interesting actually this whole argument. I think, guys, because I think as I was saying, Ronnie's instinct is to do that when the sides are in the lead. He does it a lot when you look at his substitutions. But as Joris was saying, the thing about this game was, club were on top. So to make what were basically negative substitutions at that point is kind of quite strange with how long of the game there was left as well. So his instincts went against what he actually did there, which is the most interesting thing I think about it. And his face afterwards, I was saying to you guys, did you see Ronnie's face? He looked absolutely shell-shocked about what had happened as well. He really did.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, I think he knew at that moment. But yeah, like Scott mentioned, even 15 games unbeaten across all competitions. Yeah, and yeah, imagine only 1 week ago we were everyone, not only us, but we're talking about them maybe being able to be the biggest challengers for Union, but now they dropped 5 points and it looks so far away already again. And Antwerp is as likely in a way, since they're literally in the same position in the league now. Yeah, that which is a surprise on itself. Yeah, and for Antwerp, well, I guess a great week in the form of 3 shots from distance, because actually they were not playing well. Also, in the game against Standard, they did not deserve to win either of those games. If to be frank, but they do get the full amount of points for them, and of course that puts them right in the saddle and a bit more secure in playoff one. Although, yeah, everything can still change really quickly. It's difficult to predict, but it looks like it's a bit more cemented and a bit of. It's not that long anymore, of course, as well. So there's not that much time to catch other teams. Yeah, and like another one with Corbani scoring with, I'm not sure if it's actually truth in this case. I might be bending the truth a little bit here, but with his first touch of the game, with that strike from distance, he might have had some before. I'm not sure. I might not be lying either, but at least with one of his first touches, let's put it that way. Definitely. Yeah, well, and yeah, a really good goal to score your first one in the senior side, of course. Even though I agree with Scott, that Mignolet's positioning there, it was not perfect. Like it's a really good goal, but it's not unstoppable. I think keeper from the stature of Mignolet should be able to get that one. Yeah, and the second one is probably even worse, in a way. Although, yeah, okay, both of them, Mignolet is not completely free of charge of blame.
Yeah, I think to be fair, you can see it on his face as well, couldn't you? He knows that he should have done better. He was quite kind of honest with himself, I guess you could say on that one. But yeah, the Dumbia strike from the midweek is definitely worth seeing if you had him against Standard EH. That's a fantastic, fantastic goal. Let's go to Urpen, or as Florian Kofeld's calling him these days, just Urpen, because it's just Urpen. No one cares about Urpen. The referees hate us. He had his... I can't remember how long ago it was. There was a moment where like Roy Hodgson just randomly after a game just completely exploded and was like the most un-Roy Hodgson moment ever. And Kofeld's had his Roy Hodgson moment after this game. He's just gone absolutely flipping mental. So we'll get to that in a second, but Only one goal separated the sides. It was Dan Foulon. Yeah, he's just been playing really well recently, and he kind of, if we're harking back to Premier League old boys and old days, he did a reverse Glenn Johnson. People that remember Glenn Johnson randomly cutting in and shooting with his weak foot and it flying into the back of the net, and everyone being like, "This is incredible." And then on the playground, we all tried to recreate the Glenn Johnson. Maybe then there'll be people on the kids on the schoolyards of Mechelen being like, "I'm going to do a fool and I'm going to cut in and smash it into the back of the net." I highly doubt it. But he gets a lovely, lovely goal from him. But yeah, Kofod after the game just went absolutely mad. He says it was a handball by Mikhail, the Mechelen player. I literally haven't seen it, so I have absolutely no idea. But judging by what he's saying, I presume there probably was. He's like, clear mistake by the ref. They just will find a reason to explain it. But then he's like, it's not an excuse. We should have won the game 3-1, probably 4-1. We would have just equalised with the penalty. He's like, this happened to us before. They just don't care because we're just Erpen. It's just Erpen. They're not going to complain. But now I'm complaining. Now I'm kicking off. Of course, I'm speaking to the referees, but they don't respect me, yada, yada, yada. So Florian Kofod's really, really pissed off at the moment. I think he's just kind of had enough of Erpen not getting the rub of the green. But at the end of the day, like he says, they should have won 4-1. They didn't. They can't score, and that's kind of the problem they have.
I love his optimism.
Yeah. Well, who says that even score the penalty? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of just is what it is. Whereas Besnik Harsi's he's like, results wise, they're doing a fantastic job. Even though they conceded like 18 shots to Earth, and then he had one on target and it went into the back of the net. But at the end of the day, it's keeping him in the league, and I think they've got a reasonably nice run coming up of a couple of teams that, if they beat them, they are more than likely going to be safe if they can just avoid dropping points. I'm just trying to remember who those teams are. So yeah, they've got kind of in their run, and they've got like kind of Kortrijk and Leuven. So you think if they can beat those two within their run, and they could probably lose the other games, and they mathematically obviously would be fine. I can't imagine if I had to kind of look at the maths, that wouldn't be the case, but I presume that would be fine. So yeah, good win for Mechelen. Not great for Erpen. They did beat Antwerp the other week, but then they've lost to Charleroi in the week. They've lost to Mechelen in the week, so it's kind of just back to square one for them, I guess.
Well, Eupen did create more than Mechelen, so this is where Florian's right. They probably did deserve something out of the game on the balance of play, but as Ben was saying, they just can't score goals, and you're always going to be vulnerable against anybody, even another side that don't score that many, and Mechelen aren't scoring as many as they should or as they used to. They've really been digging deep recently, as I was saying to Joris last week, and picking up some really valuable points. 3 wins in the last 4 now. And if they can continue this form and continue to dig deep for another few weeks and pick up some more points, they're not a million miles away from knocking on the door of a playoff 1 spot, which is unbelievable when you look at it now. I would have said no chance even 3 or 4 weeks ago to that, but it's amazing because again they've had a kind of quite a quiet window. Obviously the most interesting one is Islam Samani coming back to Belgium, 35 years old now. We know he can do a job, and he has lots of interesting elements to kind of his game. He's big, he's physical, he's good in the air, he's got a great eye for goal. It kind of makes sense as a short-term signing. It doesn't excite me as someone who has a big Mechelen soft spot, but I completely understand it. Particularly with some of the faces that have gone out, when that option became available in a short-term deal, then yeah, I probably would have pushed that button myself. Besnik Hazi, I think, is delighted with it because of I suppose, from a tactical point of view, the options it gives him in an attacking sense as well. It gives him more in one signing as well. So in that way, it's kind of quite good. Garanesh Murananga's come in as well. He played sort of the last 27 minutes of the game. Decent signing, replacement for Jordi van Laberg, of course, who's gone to Brøndby. But yeah, I mean, things looking up for Mechelen, and I think the most important thing for them at the moment is just to try and maintain the momentum. They're starting to build up a little bit now. Key players are still to come back as well. Nicolas Storm obviously being the most important one. Should be back by the end of February. Probably won't see the best of him, obviously, because he's not going to be completely fit, but we will see him again before the end of the season, and that in itself is just a tremendous boost to the whole club. I think Florian Kohfeld's rage this week, as Ben was talking about, probably speaks more to just the general pressure that he's feeling at the moment as well. Things are looking really squeaky for them down there, and although there has been a slight improvement for them in recent weeks, things ultimately are still going against them, and they're kind of still in the thick of it. And that initial little bounce that they got with Reino Imon coming in seems to have been halted by his boutness of sickness this week, which led to him missing the game.
Yeah, and of course, there was the handball. There was also then the late on, rightfully red card for De Jong as well. Though I don't think he was really complaining about that one. But yeah, of course he can miss that at the moment. I think everyone can miss that in any situation. But that really stupid action from De Jong there at the end of the game. But two painful 1-0 losses last week for and of course against straight opponents. And well, at that point of time, still at least straight opponents. I don't think you can still say the same about Mechelen anymore. I do think they already have enough margin now. And in general, I guess he's right. Not getting a few calls the last few weeks, they're going their way. On the other hand, you can also say Mechelen actually have gotten a lot of them their way. The last 3 games, actually, the penalty against Anderlecht, and the penalty that Anderlecht did not get afterwards, for example, and that's only for 1 point. But then the Molenbeek was also furious the game before that for the. Yeah, they still want to replay that game as well. I guess I don't know if that's still something that's in there. I don't think so, but at least they wanted that. So Mechelen got a penalty call against them, not called on as well in that game for a similar thing. I guess actually that's what happened in this game. And Mechelen on itself, the statistics this game actually already say it as well. They're not necessarily playing that well, but they are getting the points. I would also go more Scots way and say Mechelen play Genk this weekend. Mechelen, Genk at home. Genk have only won in Mechelen once in 20 years, I believe, and they're only 4 points away from them. Okay, Genk in itself are also not in the currently in the playoff spot, but yeah, if they win that one, which is not completely unlikely, that would really catapult them. And of course, then they still depend on Cercles result next weekend and also in the next upcoming weeks. But yeah, as been mentioned, there are a few more winnable games for Mechelen in there as well. So that they might end up for the first time in the Champions League, in the Champions playoffs this season. That I feel like is a bit optimistic, given the level that they're performing at. But I mean, if things keep falling their way as they have been recently, who knows?
It'd be like there's that picture, isn't there, of like a tortoise on top of like a pillar or like a garden post thing. And it's like no one has any idea how he got there, and no one knows why it's there. And it shouldn't be there. I feel like if Mechelen make the top 6, we'll be like, "What? What are you doing here?" I mean, everyone kind of looking at this person walking into like a room, like, "Huh? Where did you get here?" But they're going to get Mori Kanate back as well, obviously. So that'd be a nice little bonus to that midfield, kind of shore it up a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it would just be bizarre if they made it into playoff one. I mean, yeah,
it's just not gonna happen, is it? But no, still, there's a chance somehow. Yeah,
4 points. I mean, it's not impossible. And Slimani, I don't know. It's kind of like Scott, you kind of described in there, and I was like, it just sounds like they've got their Di Camargo back, kind of that the veteran that you can just lob on to win a couple of headers and do stuff. But he's one of those players that I think if the wingers can start really firing off at Mechelen, he could just thrive because he loves that sort of service and stuff. We saw him when he was at his best for Algeria and other teams and stuff. Like if you get the ball in the box, he just loves it. Like, he just loves the game. I think you noticed that. We saw that when he was at Anderlecht. He just loves to play football. He loves to bully defenders. He loves to score goals. And it's like, what more could you want in your team to chuck on near the end? And he's head and shoulders above what they've got up front at the moment. Like, even if he's like partially fit, 70% of Samani is better than anything Mechelen have up front at the moment. So I'm excited for him to be back. I love him. He's one of my favourite players. He's been one of my favourite players for a long time. And I think, yeah, it's cool to see him back. And I hope he has a similar impact to what he did at Anderlecht. But then maybe they will find themselves in playoff one. And Slimani denying Anderlecht the title. Like, could you imagine? That could be quite something. Speaking of Anderlecht, this is the game that we've got to talk about. The most ridiculous game of football this weekend. Of the things that did actually happen, just before half time, Anderlecht gets a penalty foul by, I believe it was Watanabe, at steps Andres Dreyer. Nice finish from him, 1-0. Fair enough, going at half time. Again, obviously no Kuipers, he's gone, so it's De Potra and Tisu Dali. The band's back together again, the brotherhood, the two fine players together. Looks like they've got themselves a penalty in the second half. Ball hits Vertonghen on the hand. It's a clear and obvious penalty. However, there's then given a free kick for a foul by De Potra on Ritz. This one, Hein did hate, obviously. Like, he's quite angry about this one. This one, I'm kind of a little bit less, like, angry about myself. I think it's still a little bit ridiculous, but I'm like, okay, fine. Like, you can kind of give it because maybe De Potra grabs Ritz first. But they're both just kind of going at it. We then have... this may be in the wrong order, so kind of correct me if I'm wrong, but Nilson Angulo is played through on goal, but the referee the linesman just brings his flag up and calls it offside before he's had a chance to do anything, and he puts the ball in the back of the net, but everyone's kind of stopped play at this point. He's miles onside. Like, he's definitely onside, and it's just, it makes no sense because this whole year we've seen linesmen not bring their flags up. They wait until the players kind of finalise, and then they'll bring their flag up for offside. So I get Anderlecht fans are like, kind of, well, you've had that one, but then we've had this one. So I kind of understand it. But the last one is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. One of the worst decisions I've ever seen. I'm not saying this just because I went to Ghent and had a bloody good time. I'm saying it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Corner for Ghent, or I think it's corner for Ghent or free kick. I can't quite remember what it is. Ball comes in, gets headed clear. Julian Dessart absolutely leathers it past Kasper Schmeichel. Kasper Schmeichel in his prime's not getting near that. Kasper Schmeichel in 35 plus, he's definitely not saving it. Fantastic goal. For some reason, Arnstad's on the floor, and you're like, what happened there? Like, did he get hit in the face? Did he like get punched? Like, what happened? He looks like something's happened. Oh, ridiculous! Absolutely ridiculous. So he's not even looking at the ball. He's never looks at the ball when this corner's been taken. He's just staring at Kandus. Kandus gets the step on him, so he tries to block the path, and obviously Kandus runs into him, hand touches his face as he's trying to go past, because Kandus is like twice the bloody size of him. He goes down clutching his face as if he's been hit. The referee sees it and calls a free kick for Anderlecht. If anything, and I do kind of agree with Hein, if anything, Arnstad has blocked Kandus's run. It's actually a penalty because he's tried to bloody rugby tackle the bloke. He sticks his arm out round his waist. And even Hein's like, it's not rugby, you can't do this, blah, blah, blah. And obviously Hein's just going mental. He's doing it like, twice, we've been denied 2 times, we've been cheated, blah, blah, blah. First one, I'm like, okay, fine, that cancels it out with the Angulo one, because the Angulo offside one's also absolutely ridiculous and never been called. But this second one has denied one of the best goals of the weekend. And it's an utterly ridiculous decision. It's just a complete misinterpretation of the rules of the game, because like I said, Arnstad doesn't look at the ball. He never looks at the ball. Kandus is just playing the ball. He's trying to get the header, and Arnstad blocks him and then goes down. It's just like, it's just not a foul. It's just not a foul at any time of the game. So they have come out and then said, we're not going to appeal it and try and get a replay. And I was like, well, you can't anyway. Like, at least with Genk, it's like, there was such a clear error that it was like completely against the rules of play and blah, blah, blah. Like, it was very, very clear that this was completely wrong, what happened with the Genk game. This one, it's just they've interpreted it in a certain way that's wrong, but they can get away with it. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you try to appeal it, they could say, the referee could easily say, well, I've judged it this and blah, 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 it's fine. But honestly, it did kind of wind me up, that one, when it got called off, because I was like, it's just the most ridiculous kind of interpretation of a rule, and it's rewarding a defender for making an illegal play. It's stupid. So I completely kind of sympathise with him, and it would have been a massive point for them because they've been awful recently. They have been terrible. They have no kind of goal threat at the moment or anything like that, and they got this wonder goal and they've just been denied it by some really, really poor refereeing.
Yeah, I think that decision was for many people moment of the weekend. Completely agree with Ben. Ludicrous. It is just not a foul, and I don't think anybody really knew what was going on. Big Hein, understandably, had a lot to say about this game. He always has a lot to say, rightly or wrongly. This week it was all right. He actually said at one point that the officiating was amateurism of the highest order. He wasn't. He wasn't mincing his words this week. He was looking a little bit less angry than I've seen him when decisions have gone against him. But I think he's obviously reached a point where he's seen so much ludicrousness now that he's you might as well actually say what you think and take the fine, take the trouble that comes, because in some leagues you couldn't come out with a statement like that without there being trouble to follow. So he's been around long enough, Hein, to not mince his words, and I kind of enjoyed listening to him this week because he was spot on. I think Anderlecht, as I was saying, still overperforming slightly. I think still getting things going their way, and I'm not a conspiracy theory freak, but there are some out there following Belgian football and Belgian football fans who do think that Anderlecht get the rub of the green with a lot of officiating. There was talk this week of the secret database that the refereeing department has that keeps a track of stats in terms of which decisions go for which side and which against. So there's little league tables of referees, which is all top secret and not publicly available. And I think there was a lot of people looking at this decision in this game going, okay, right, well, Anderlecht have had another favour kind of go their way that just seems as ludicrous as it was kind of the rest of us. But I'm not saying there's a conspiracy at all, but there are some who do believe it. I don't really believe in these things. Ghent, on the other hand, have had, as we know, they've had a miserable January, which we thought they might have. We weren't sure, but it turns out they did for a combination of reasons. February hasn't started off too great for them either, and I think their title challenge is probably over now as well, which is so unfortunate. And I suppose we have to talk about this a wee bit. Where do we think they are at now, guys? Because I know Ben is kind of unsure. He's leaning towards not a great window. They've racked up the cash big time. Obviously, Kuipers has gone out. That was confirmed today. Orban's gone out. Kuipers actually 33 goals in 59 games for Ghent. Orban 32 in 52. Almost identical figures, marginally more impressive for Orban. Fofana's gone as well. So they're sitting on a massive, big, fat pile of cash. They've brought in a few faces. I'm actually unsure. I'm not sure whether they're stronger and there's more depth there or not. Time will tell. Maybe I'm being swayed by the pure form at the moment. Joris, on the other hand, I know, Joris, you lean towards them being in a slightly stronger position coming out of this window, don't you?
I don't think their recruitment was bad. That's the main thing, I guess. The replacement has been good. Of course, doing a whole overhaul of your starting 11 in the middle of the season is generally not a great idea. I guess I'm sitting on the fence more than anything else, which is already a more positive view than both of you, I think. But yeah, well, I do like quite some of the recruitment. Sonko is supposed to be a really good talent, but of course, also it's an 18, 19-year-old talent. Sometimes they will need some time to adapt. Of course, that goes for any kind of player, but and of course, some players are coming back now as well. Watanabe already was there, albeit he actually had a better game causing that penalty, and actually I think he was taking off at the break consequently as well straight away, so maybe it was not the best decision to throw him straight away. But yeah, nonetheless, few players are coming back. To Sadali also already made back. They still might need some time, but in the longer term, I'm not sure they're not that they're that much weaker than they were before. But yeah, the long term, it's of course the short term that they need, and the midterm, and given the results, I guess really not going their way That's one point in 2024 so far. Like I think it's probably the one side doing worse than Genk at the moment. So well, that's that. Yeah, that's not great, of course, and then Uno not barely dropping any points. So yeah, for really a title challenge, I don't think that's going to happen anymore, obviously. But I'm not sure if that would have happened otherwise. Of course, we'll never know. But yeah, they did too much of an overhaul. But I do think the recruitment and the replacements might prove well, good replacements in the longer run. But yeah, what that means for the rest of this season, hopefully for them, the long run is not too long. Especially with only like some players coming back from Asia and from Africa, from their respective cups there. Yeah. Anderlecht now firmly in second place with this result, 7 points ahead of the competition there now. Also, the first win against Gent in 5 years' time. I think I've used this stats a few times when it didn't happen, but the last time that happened was with Van Hazenbroek as manager of Anderlecht and Kums scoring both goals for Anderlecht as well. Now the captain of Gent again as well, of course. After the Anderlecht one spell was more in between his two Gent spells. Yeah. Yeah, what else to say? That call was ridiculous. The call afterwards was even more ridiculous. The offside call, Angulo was like 1 meter onside and he scored 2-0. Of course, that might not have happened if that first call would have gone differently. That's speculation, of course. We never know. And also, I think players already had stopped because they had stopped they had blown the whistle, but the wait and see rule doesn't seem to exist. I think that's a really, like, you can't really do that anymore in these times of VAR anyway, despite all the controversy that there is. Yeah, that's a weird one. And of course, Anderlecht also, like I mentioned before, in the midweek game against Mechelen, decisions actually even did not go their way at the back end of the game there, at both ends of at both penalty boxes. Yeah, whether that's all in even at the end of the season, well, more or less, I still believe that's probably the case for any team anyway. But it always feels like for supporters from either your own side or of opponents that it's leaning towards some other teams' favor more than in others. But that's what fans do, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like when we started this podcast, everyone was like, Club Brugge get all the decisions. Club Brugge always got all the decisions. Yeah. Now it's Anderlecht. But really, what we've kind of decided tonight, I think, collectively, is that Mechelen are the most favoured team by the referees. And Mechelen are clearly the favourites. And that all the referees love Mechelen. And they just...
Yeah, and well... The one thing that's of course adds to all that is, of course, that like this whole corruption scandal is only 5 years ago and nothing much tangible has happened there. And well, okay, this is jokingly, but Mechelen were of course involved there.
if they're doing anything like dodgy and corrupt, they're not doing it well enough, in my opinion.
Don't let anyone tell us we don't join the dots here.
Investigative reporting over here.
But I don't think they are in the financial situation to be able to do so at the moment.
That's all their money's gone. No, I think just kind of rounding it back to the Ghent transfer window, I think my kind of view on it was I feel they've completely dropped the ball on what should have been a title-winning season this year. I think they should have been right up there because they had the squad to be right up there. They've just not performed to the level that they should. I think the sales of Orban and Fofana were brilliant. I think they were fantastic. I think they made financially completely the right decision there. Like, that money that they got is just, you can't turn that down in the Pro League. It's just really, really good money for those two players. And we have to remember Orban wasn't really performing anyway. It's the Kuipers one for me. Like, when I went to watch them play, I just thought they've got nothing. They didn't really have anything to connect to Kuipers without kind of like a Tisu Dali or someone like that, or like, obviously, Hong-Suk Hong as well. He is the kind of link man. So it's like, okay, maybe when they get Hong back, they'll be fine because they'll have him. And yeah, I agree with you. So I think some of those players, like the, I don't want to butcher his name, the other Japanese guy that they signed, Yokota, from Golden Chapter, he looked really good. He just, like, some of the passes he did, I was like, yeah, this kid can play. Serdaz as well. Like I kind of liked the energy and kind of looks like quite an exciting player, and I can see why they brought him in. Sonko as well. You've already mentioned Mitrovic. we already know about Mitrovic, so he's not really kind of a new one. And quite surprised he's got a contract till 2027, but he's one of Hein's boys, so maybe that keeps Hein in a job as well. I don't know. Keep him there. But I think Hein he actually made a really good point. He said these sales set us up to act like a big club in Belgium in the summer. And I think that's kind of, they've decided, they've just said, we're not going to win the league this season. Let's just kind of get all that money in. But then the Kuipers one really stings. It's kind of, you're now relying on De Portela and Tissoudali to carry the load. And they did it a couple of seasons ago and they were great together. But De Portela's 35 now and he's been out most of the season. And I feel like there needs to be a slight kind of change as well, because I feel like it's just, I don't want to kind of rag on some of these guys, but again, like going to watch them play, you really did notice that. We've said it before, and it's a Hein thing. They just have kind of like workman, like kind of fullbacks, like Brown and Samwise. They're just workmen. Like they don't really have the quality to create anything. Like there'd be moments where Brown or Samwise would get the ball, and you're like, you need to do something here. Like you need to beat someone, or you need to cross it, or you need to be able to do this, and you just didn't really have it. And I didn't get to mention it, but like Noah Fadiga came on, and in my mind, he was one of the best players on the pitch because he tried to do stuff and like he got stuff going for them against Westerlo. So there was Serdaz and Makuto and kind of these other guys. You're like, just stick them out wide and let's have some fun here, please. Like, want stuff to do, because that's what Castro Montes was quite good at, and that's what he's doing obviously at Union. Like he is one of those guys that will drive forward and try and get balls into the box and stuff, and it's just kind of lacking that at the moment, and that's why they're kind of relying on Union to start screamers.
And like, yeah, two things. Okay, yes, my whole assessment of that transfer window, I made it with you guys, I think, even before the window closed, and that was still in the assumption they would at least get someone to replace Kuipers. Yeah, that one didn't come, and that also, I had forgotten that in my overview here. Yeah, that is definitely one that will hurt them a lot. Even though, Kuipers, it seems like he himself really wanted to go this time. They had halted the transfer in the summer. I guess after the sale of the others, like he also felt like, well, why am I still here then? And also, one, why didn't you let me go? And two, well, are also on the field, like our chances are diminished anyway. So like, I mean, what are you guys doing? And they're not getting replacement. Yeah, that's definitely gonna hurt them on the shorter term for sure. And that was one thing. And the other thing, of course, their level indeed has just not been great. Also in this game against Anderlecht, they were just poor. I guess you can still that part of Hans' frustration is probably also coming from that, and it actually is working. Like nobody's talking about how poor they actually were. That it's one of those deflection techniques that it often does actually in the media, but like actually I think in some papers there was not even a big word about the how Kent played, but more like 3 pages full of the decisions and the refereeing. Yeah, that of course that's only part of it. There's definitely some larger frustration going on in there as well, but I'm sure that also plays a little part in at least a little part in this whole tyranny of words, I guess.
Yeah, no, it is a shame because I did feel like they had a really good chance this year, but I just feel like even the Kuipers one, like 12 million, I think it's kind of been banded around that. You can't really say no to that money, kind of. And if he wants to go to the MLS, like he wants to go to the MLS, you've not sold him in competition, you've not sold him to another European side. You've actually sent him across the sea, and it's like it's kind of weird. It's a weird move for him, in my opinion. Like I don't want to kind of take a dump on the MLS, but it's never really become that league that it thinks it is, in my opinion. Like it's never become the league it thinks it should be. Like even with like Messi going there, it just feels very kind of like it's not that league where you're going to get like a call up to the Belgian national team if you're playing over there. Like, it's just not going to happen. And I think he's kind of punted on that as well. I think he's maybe fair enough. He's just said, "No, it's not going to happen to me. I'm going to continue to be overlooked. Why not just go and earn a load of money, have probably quite a nice time over there, and not have to watch my team just not be able to give me the ball for 90 minutes and create anything." So yeah, I think.
Although he will have to buy a hat because Chicago's famously very windy.
It is pretty windy, isn't it? Yeah. Maybe that'll help the ball kind of move towards him to go into the back of the net. I don't know. Good luck to him over there. I think they could have maybe sold him and said, like, look, in the summer we're going to get all these players in and we're going to compete again because we've just got loads of money. But he's gone, and it's like, and to be fair, I don't think Gustav Nilsson or Mikkel Buren would have been the answer to the striker problem anyway. I know we said Nilsson obviously he's doing well for Union, but I don't think he feels to me like one of those players that if he moves somewhere, I don't think he'd be as good. I think he's good at Union because of Union. I don't think he'd be good anywhere else, to be honest. One team that will probably take advantage of Ghent slipping up and who do have a striker that, in my opinion, would be good in most places, a Cercle Brugge and Kevin Denke. They welcomed St. Sluden, and poor old Mr. Joe Coppens just had a nightmare in this one. He picked the ball up a lot of times and he wasn't too great between the sticks either. 10 minutes in, lovely counter-attacking move from Cercle Brugge. Just Sommers playing it down the line. I think it's Minder gets on it, crosses the back post. Kevin Denke tucks it in 1-0. Minder then gets... Denke then scores again in the... Minder, I'm getting my players all mixed up. Minder then scores in the 42nd minute. He's just in front of Coppens. Coppens comes to get the ball, and Minder's just there to tuck it in. So it's a goal and assist for Minder. He then gets his second assist of the game. Ball to the back post to Denke. It kind of goes a little bit further than the goal. I have to say at this moment, I kind of looked away because I was like, oh, the chance has gone. So I was like, I just was checking something else. Look up and Denke's celebrating. He just smashed it past Coppens from the near post. Fourth goal, Olagbe at 67th minute. He just waltzes through the St. Truden defence, which is just, by this point, they've just given up. They've just been absolutely blitzed by Cercle's kind of pressing and counter-attacking. That Cercle end the game is 34% possession, but they were just brilliant on the counter-attack. They just kind of, it was classic, kind of, to me, it's one of those classic cases of where Cercle just, you can tell they've just done their homework. They know exactly how they're going to win this game. Miron's just gone in, and all the guys have gone in with the stats and data and all that, and they've said, look, they're going to have the ball the whole game. That's fine. We just let them have it because we're just going to batter them on the counter with, like, you just look at the kind of players he put in different positions, like drop Sommers back from that forward position that he's usually into right back so that he could get Minder and Olagbe in there to kind of just bomb on down the lines. And Denke was just always going to have a nice little field day, and he did. 4-0 at that point. St. Truden then do have a little counter-attack of themselves at the end of the game. Giuseppe Barnes, congratulations to him scoring his first goal in the Pro League. Gutted for him that it came in one of these sort of games. It just felt like a real shame that it just happened to come when they were getting absolutely battered and lost. But congratulations to him. Didn't see any Adriano Bertazzini, unfortunately, but he is the new man in St. Truden, although maybe a little bit of competition with Zara Salarim up front, but it shouldn't be too long until we see Adriano. And I think we've all kind of been banging the St. Truden should sign him drum for a little bit of time now. So it's nice to see that they clearly listened to us, and it wasn't anything to do with their scouting. It was just they listened to us. Like, we'll go get him because these boys are telling us to do it. Great win for Cercle. I think that's a fantastic win for them into that top six. Just 3 points behind Ghent. Puts that kind of Westerlo defeat behind them with a nice win there, and Kevin Denke amongst the goals, and Alan Minder, special shout out, he was fantastic.
Yeah, I think we've been raving a lot this season about how good St. Truden have been to watch. They play, quite good, expansive, one-touch attacking football. The sort of football I think that Ivan Lekon would love to see his standard side playing, actually. Horizontal football, if you will. This is what happens when you're not good enough to play around a side that is as aggressive in the press as Cercle is and as structured in their play. As Ben was saying, they really did their homework, and as good as St. Truden have been to watch, and as expansive as they are, then they're not good enough or structured enough to be able to play around the strengths to Cercle's game. Cercle really exploited that, as Ben was saying, brilliantly this weekend. Yep, you have the ball because we know we're going to nick it off you. Cercle are the masters of the high turnovers as well and forced mistakes in sides. And St. Truden are a side who, again, as good as they are, there's a lot of slack passing sometimes in the midst of trying to do something brilliant. And sometimes it's come off for this season for them, and at other times it hasn't. doesn't. And Cercle are the sort of side that will kill you on their day if that's the sort of football you play. And that's exactly what happened here. It could have been more. Ben's right. They've spent big for St Truden. They've spent a little bit more than 800,000, I think, on Bertuccini. Wasn't in the squad this weekend. A lot of talk about Torsten Fink wanting to give him a little bit of time getting used to their system, which I thought was slightly odd. But at the same time, I do understand why a coach wouldn't pitch somebody in there. His game, I've said this a few times before, I've seen a few of RFC Liège's games this season. Admittedly, not a lot of them. I've seen 2 or 3 games where he started, and he's got some elements to his game that I think are really strong that a lot of sides would really like, and I think he can add to what they do. He could be the missing link, but it's underline the word could at the moment, because there's certainly plenty of pressure on him, because he's not going to get a great deal of support in terms of other players pitching in with a lot of goals, other than our friend Aboubakary Koita, who is having generally a really good season and is probably going to be off in the summer. So that's probably another reason why the recruitment team in Audrey Pinto at St Truden have decided that they really need to try and address that now, rather than worrying about being in an even deeper hole in the summer.
Yeah, I guess so. It will be an interesting summer for them anyway. I think with St Truden already this winter as well, but they managed to not lose many players. Shioka is the main one, I guess. The rest stayed so far. But what will be if that still will be the case at the end of the season? That's highly doubtful. I think they also might have to sell still as well. A little bit for the financial situation, as many teams in Belgium had the realities of the financing there. In this game, losing 4-1 after winning 4-1 against Gent in the midweek. Mirrored results, I guess, and also that was a deserved win. But you would probably not have expected those results to go before these games. That they would go this way if you knew the result of those games. But I guess a complete off day. They seem a little bit, less good in the last few weeks outside of that game against Gent in their level of play. This time they really had an off day, and Barnes got his first of the season. Indeed, that's probably the main thing they get out of it. Maybe it's already because of Bertaccini being knocking on the door as well soon. Although it's more Zaire Islam, who is actually in the recent weeks actually has found some form, has pitched in with a few goals, and has been decent for them in the last few weeks and months, maybe even. Just not scoring enough. But now he finally seems to have taken off a little. Nothing too exciting yet, but a few goals at least. And Cercle, of course, in the top 6 again now after their first win in 2024. They also highly needed that win, but you can see some teams are really dipping in form around those positions. And that makes one win already, jump back into the top 6 at the moment. Yes, I'm talking about Genk here at the moment, but also Gent, they're not that far. They're both these sides are now 3 points of Gent. But a tough loss though for Sint-Truiden, of course, because this if they would have won this one, they actually would have leapfrogged Cercle, and they would have been closer to this top 6 and have some more aspirations. Now, of course, in points, it's still overseeable, but that there's one more team they would need to catch. So I don't think they really. I think that seals it for them for this season. For which playoffs they will be in, at least how that will go in those playoffs, that will be different. That's still a different story. But that's that. And I already mentioned Denki and Minda both had great games. Denki 2 goals again, and Minda 2 assists and a goal. Can't ask for more, I guess.
No, definitely can't. They'll be very happy in the Cercle Bruges camp. And I think it's still remarkable, isn't it? Like, we're talking about our St. Truden's playoff one or playoffs done, and it's like we're kind of in February, and it's like we'd never expected to be even talking about them going anywhere near that. And I kind of do like what you said there, Scott, that Schmidt said about, and Torsten Fink, sorry, Schmidt. Torsten Fink said about, so I was chucking a random German surname at you and hoping that that's the right one. Torsten Fink said about Bertuccini kind of...
Or Japanese.
Yeah, it could work. It could work in St. Truden. Just about like letting Bertuccini kind of settle into the system. I actually really like that because it shows to me that he's not just like, oh, I'll just chuck this guy in and just hope he'll do the business, and I hope he'll just kind of learn on the fly. It's like, no, I have a system, I have a way of playing, and I need him to understand that, because otherwise it just won't work and the pieces will kind of fall apart, and it's disjointed. Like, he's clearly like a very tactical thinking coach, and I think part of that's probably why they had the downfall this weekend, because Circle just would have watched all the tape, and it just, like you said, Scott, they just played into their hands because they are the best pressing team in the league. We know, like, the stats don't lie about that. They regain possession in the final third the most out of every team in the Pro League. And I think against other teams St. Truden play that want the ball as well, their style of play just really, really works, because some of these teams need the ball. But Circle are one of those teams, they're very happy for you to play it around the back, because they're like, well, Kevin's going to start the press and then we're just going to follow him. And then you're going to go long, and then Darlin's going to mop up, and it's just one of those. I guess you can kind of compare it to as a kid when you're kind of like used to play the older like Pokemon games, and you go to the gyms, one of those like gyms, and it's like, oh, it's a water Pokemon gym. So you're like, I'll just bring my electric Pokemon. It's just going to win me every single fight in this gym. That's kind of Circle Music against St. Truden. Like, they're the electric Pokemon, St. Truden the water one, and they're like, yeah, we'll just batter them because our style is just, they're not going to be able to counter with it. So yeah, that's probably not an analogy that they use. I can't imagine Milne ever using that, or any of the boys at Circle using that. But if they want to use it, like, feel free. I think it's quite a good one. That rounds up the Pro League. We've already mentioned that Union and Club Brugge are playing each other in the Cup semi-finals. Other semi-final, Oostend against Antwerp. Oostend being the semi-final, kind of like, yeah, I guess kind of like Mechelen in the top six, isn't it? You're like, how, what, why? Like, really? This season of all seasons? But they are there. Which kind of leads us nicely onto the Challenger Pro League. Scott, give us a lowdown of what has been happening there, because it's been, once again, another exciting weekend.
Yeah, it's genuinely getting more and more exciting by the week there, and tighter as well. There's now only 7 points separating the top 7 sides, which is unbelievable. So it's kind of anybody's, and that's the way that those sides will be looking at it. If you don't know what happened this weekend, Club Next lost 1-0 to Denza. SL16 lost 1-0 to Anderlecht Futures. Leers continued to struggle. They lost 2-1 to another side struggling, Oostend, winning 2-1. At the Lisp. Lommel and Dender finished 2 each. Zulte Waregem and Beveren ended 1-0 to Beveren in a game that had some interesting drama leading up to it, which we'll get to in a second. Serang are now bottom. They lost 3-1 at home to Young Genk. Mbaile not managing to have much joy in his opening few games at Serang. Patro Eisden beat Frank Baran 3-1, and RFC Liège, minus Mr. Adriano Bertuccini, lost 4-1 at home to Dirk Kuyt's Beerschot. Beerschot are back top now, courtesy of that win. They're a point ahead of Denza, who were for a little while this weekend top themselves before Beerschot played. They're on pretty good run of form at the moment, Denza, right in the mix. Beveren have got themselves back into the playoff spots now, courtesy of that win at the Gaverbeek against Zulte, which had a rather bizarre, the drama leading into this weekend, guys. It looked as if Beveren were not going to be allowed any away fans in Waregem because of the ongoing farmers' strike action, and there being a supposed lack of police man force available for the game. But, sanity prevailed in the end, and people got together, and Beveren fans did get to the game, which they'll have been glad of because they played very well and got the points in the end. So, it's one of those ones where, if you're making that journey, you want to make it worth your while, and they certainly did. Koliapu with a bullet of a header to win that game. Beveren kind of right back in it, and they've got quite a favourable run of fixtures coming up over the next 3 or 4 weeks as well, where on paper anyway, there's definitely some more points for them there. But as I was saying, 7 points between the top 7 sides. It's getting wild. Liers, by the way, who me and Joris were touching on last week, Liers still are yet to appoint a new T1. We're getting on to close to a month now It's quite a while. So, everyone's wondering what's going on there. We thought we would have some news by now, but we don't yet. So we'll keep an eye on that. Serang, as I was saying, have slipped to bottom. And are very much now on course for back-to-back relegations, not something anybody wants to do. And the other side, who've been in a lot of trouble, of course, Ostend, are now out of the drop zone and, giving themselves a real fighting chance at the moment.
It's just wild, isn't it, that they're out of the drop zone? When you think how many points they've lost as well, kind of from points deductions. Mr. Ewan Henderson on loan from Scots country. He's doing a very, very good job for them there. And I was just looking at Serang, and it's kind of maybe not funny, but they had they obviously got back-to-back promotions into the Pro League, and now they're just going straight back down to the straight back down again to the third tier. It was like, yeah, we had some fun. Now we're going back to kind of probably where they belong. Maybe, I don't know if we can say that, but it feels very much like a kind of the way the club is running itself feels very much like there'd be a place in the third division compared to the second. And I think as well, I was kind of looking with our kind of eyes towards the end, and maybe it's a little bit of bias, but you look at the teams in the playoff now. I think if you're a Pro League side, that isn't actually it's not a very nice looking playoffs. You probably don't want to face Zortavara again because they've got some players there that could do the business. If Beveren start to get a run together and miss out on the top but go into that with some momentum, they've too got some very, very good players as well. Lommel, we know, have talent. Like they've got the City Group links. They've got some talented players. Patro, they've spent and they've brought in some players with Pro League experience. They've got a very good team. Like those, you'd kind of rather face a Denza, wouldn't you, if you're one of those? Or maybe even a Beerschot. I know they've been playing well, but you're kind of like, oh, well... Again, young team that's had a bit of turbulence this season. I don't like the look of that playoff situation. No. If I'm in the Pro League, I also don't like it if I'm any of those teams in the playoffs because that is a brutal 4 teams to slog it out for that spot, isn't it? Because I guess obviously Beveren and Zortavara, they were eyeing top 2. Like they were definitely eyeing top 2 this season. We know Beveren were eyeing top 2. Anton's told us they were eyeing top 2. Fans have told us they expected to be top 2. Like we know that, and Zortavara obviously have spent enough to be a top 2 side as well. So for those 2 teams to then be in the playoffs potentially against each other, it's pretty brutal, isn't it? And I think there'll be a big kind of whichever one of those misses out that could have massive consequences for them. And then to get Beerschot and Denza promoted, Beerschot are the one that's kind of interesting for me if they get promoted because obviously they're up for sale. So, but there's no guarantee that they're going to be sold because we've got teams in the Pro League that are up for sale like Kortrijk that no one's bought. So it's like, well, why would they buy Beerschot as well? Like you just don't know. So that it could be another kind of Serang moment where we've got this team up there that isn't actually in a position where it wants to be and it actually has the kind of capacity to do what it needs to do, but it's just there. Whereas Denza, at least they have got some kind of financial backing and they've got some ambition behind them, but not as much as you look at the Zolta and the Beveren. Like you see those 2 sides in the Lommel as well. You think, yeah, if they got into the top, they've kind of got the capability to bring players in that you think should give them the chance of competing. So I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that we don't want Beerschot or Denza. Absolutely, love to see those 2 sides get up, but that playoff one is just that playoff and the Challenger. I don't know what you guys think, but I just think it looks brutal, really brutal. I wouldn't want to be any of those teams getting involved in that.
Denza actually still has some facility issues, I think, even as well, if they would get promoted. Yeah. So I would not say that out of the 2 sides that are now in the top 2, that they are the one that are.
They've got Suleiman Ad. They don't need facilities. They're fine.
They're or other issues. I don't know. I remember exactly, but there's still definitely something hanging there as well. Yeah, with Beerschot, well, they were historically, of course, a bigger club as well. So at least they have that going in comparison to the Serang situation. Of course, well, Serang maybe also in the past, but it's been too long, unfortunately. Yeah, just want to point that out. But okay, on the other hand, we're only 2/3 of the season gone there, so well, only of course, but yeah, nonetheless, it's between quotation marks, but it's not that it's gonna be it's set in stone that they will be there. It still might actually be Zotwijk and Beveren as well, very much possible. Although both of them does seem unlikely, but it's definitely not impossible. But just wanted to point out once again, like, yes, this is the Genk side I actually enjoy watching lately as well. So they added to their good form, and they seem to have played themselves. Still not completely certain, of course. As I said, still 10 games to go, but into safety and maybe even to look ahead a little bit. For in 4 games in 2024 without losing any of them. They basically mirror not mirror, but they are the polar opposite of the senior squad at the moment in points haul.
Swap them round. I have to say though, like, people that listen to this will know kind of my opinions on these sort of things, but I'm quite happy that none of the second teams are actually in the playoff picture or in the playoffs. That makes me very happy.
They would not be anyway, but
but they're just kind of messing with the like how you view the table. It just winds me out. It's like just move, like, please. You can't be there. You're not allowed to be there. Don't even go there.
The one thing I want to mention as well, again, that's the only thing I can. They're really one of the most scoring sides of the league as well. That's one of the reasons why it's always exciting. And unfortunately, they also, until recently, like, they seem to have done some tweaks there, but leaked some goals as well. So they still have a negative goal difference at the moment. But definitely, definitely some good talent coming through, and hopefully we'll see some more of it in the senior squad later on as well.
Yeah, 34 goals scored, 35 conceded is quite remarkable, isn't it? Very, very fun. Scott, any more thoughts from you on the Challenger, or were you all good?
I was just, Ben was talking there about, the kind of academy sides, and it just reminded me that I think we've seen a pattern of the non-academy sides on the whole at times really have struggled against some of the academy sides, almost as if they haven't been taking those games as seriously as they should. And remember, there was an interview a few weeks ago at the turn of the year where Ruud Vormer was talking about that, and he said that it's really, really difficult to get yourself up as a player and motivate yourself for those games, because you're going to very small grounds with virtually nobody there often, and expected to go out and perform at the level that you would hope you do. And a lot of sides now have come a cropper and dropped a lot of points against some of these sides when they probably shouldn't have. So there's an interesting kind of psychological thing in playing these sides that's a nice little companion piece to the argument about whether they should be there at all or not.
And one more thing maybe as well on this topic as well, on specifically Standard Liège 16. Standard, the CEO last night, I guess, or in one of the talk shows said they basically said they don't have money for them anymore. And I don't think they actually, some of them might not have been paid as well, and the staff. I don't think it's a surprise that they lost 7 games in a row now as well, just based on that. So, there were some more sayings on the senior side as well, I think.
They were 2 weeks late, I think. They were 2 weeks late with their pay, so motivation is a little bit lacking, perhaps, down Liège way at the moment, I think.
But I feel like they're January window, most of their signings were for the bloody SL16. Like, they signed a new player. Oh, he's going to the SL16. Oh, they signed a new. It's like, what? But we've signed him, but we're not going to pay him, basically.
Quite a few of those players were players coming back as well. Players they'd already sent out on loan elsewhere that were coming back to SL16.
It's just, the ins and outs of Standard Liège is something that we could probably speak about for 3 hours and still not have an idea how that club actually operates itself at the moment. And to be fair, I don't think Standard fans have a clue either, and that's their kind of issue with it. But I think we've probably spoken for long enough. That's the problem when one of us goes away, we come back and we've just got too many things to say between the three of us that we just go on and on and on. But as per usual, guys, it's been a pleasure being back with you and talking all things Belgian footy.
It has. It's been great to kind of chew all the cud of everything going on this week. Have a lovely week, everybody, whatever's happening. Enjoy the games this weekend, and we'll speak to you soon.
Yep, nothing to add there. Always a pleasure, and have a good one.
Nice, yeah. So, as per usual, if you like what we do, please leave us a review on your podcast app of choice. If you like it even more, please do feel free to check out our Buy Me a Coffee site as well, where you can give us a little bit of money, which is greatly appreciated. But yeah, once again, thank you very much for listening to this episode, and we'll speak to you soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.